Hey, and welcome back. I'm going to be taking a look at some more knives that I had recently got in that I did unboxing videos for, and then promptly got lazy and they kind of got stale. So I will talk about them a little bit here, hopefully a little bit faster than I would with a standard unboxing. But yeah, here we go. The first one that I have here is the Vosteed Nightshade, or sorry. Vosteed Thunderbird. Nightshade is the shell and cutter. I think I've already talked about that. But yes, this is one that a lot of people really, really love. I'm kind of meh on it overall, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit. First up, this has that Trek-Loc uh, that UA ends up using on quite a few of his knives. It kind of was introduced with the Kizer Cormorant, but he's kind of moved off and done his own knives afterwards. Some of the earlier ones were being OEM'd by Kizer. Supposedly they're doing them all themselves now, but I don't know if that means for just new models or if they've tried to reproduce what Kizer was doing on some of them. I'm not quite sure exactly how that goes, but this guy does have a heck of a lot of ways to deploy it. You got, of course, that standard flipper. You got that front flipper that works okay. You also have kind of the hole. You can do some reverse flicking with that. It's got that fuller, so I do like to flick out with an index finger from time to time. Ends up working out super, super great. This one has a wire pocket clip. I think that was basically one that they did for this black and green. Not all of them have this pocket clip though. So some others have their other kind of pocket clip there, which some people prefer. I kind of wanted to check out the wire pocket clip. It's stiffer than most, but it'll still move around on you just a little bit. But still, this is much closer to what I consider to be a good one, like Spyderco's nice and stiff ones, rather than ones that are springy and move all around on you. Yep, so I did mention this is I don't know, some people would call that G-Mascus. Other people, myself included, will refer to it as a topographic kind of pattern going on there. But basically, green and black G10 swirls. Kind of looks like some fingerprints from time to time and whatnot. Definitely not the first knife that I have with it in there, but it's a decent material there. We do have nested liners in there with some holes drilled in there, and the back spacer is brass. Not exactly sure why they went with that. I mean, I don't really have any problems with it. Maybe it was to help kind of counteract that, because this blade is a little bit on the heavier side than a lot of other Vosteeds. Speaking of which, this is also an S35VN, which is kind of the higher end steel that they've ended up using. That's not to say that they haven't used some others, like the first batch of the Nightshades and I think the Bellamy's were using M390. But if I remember right, when those were made, this company wasn't even called Vosteed. It was well, crap. I don't remember what they were called beforehand because I wasn't really on the market for them. I didn't know they existed. Blah blah blah, all that. But that is to say, the Bellamy and the Nightshade are now in 154 cm for the standard release. But of course, that can change because UA likes to play around with blade steels a bit. So subsequent versions might have different blade steel. That's also why I ended up grabbing this Thunderbird when I did, because it's not a knife that's super interesting to me. Mostly because of it is essentially a Tonto, and I don't generally like carrying them that much because I don't have need for tacticality, and I don't typically like trying to use a transition area as a tip. And because the way the Tontos usually are, those tips are kind of out of the way from doing some EDC tasks, so they just don't fit my use profile all that much. But they were thinking about changing the blade steel on these, but so I ended up picking this up because I wanted to get it in S35VN rather than what might have been a different blade steel. Might have been 14C28N, might have been Nitro V or something like that. But I don't know. They're talking about a whole bunch of different blade steels now for it. So who knows what'll happen in the future. But yeah, pocket clip can be reversed. I do like that. This is the Trek-Loc. And this one did come with a replacement Trek-Loc. Because some people were still complaining that these locks can release on you if you give just a little bit of a spine whack there. And this one does as well. And that was me trying the first one, and then the replacement one that also came in the box didn't really help. They both basically let go at the same kind of force. Is it something that's going to bother somebody for EDC? No, not at all. Or if it is, what you're doing isn't EDC. It's something kind of way more hard use. And you should probably look elsewhere than a button lock. Just straight up, they are not a strong locking mechanism. They're very fidgety. But if you want something a bit stronger with that same kind of thing, I would say look towards a crossbar lock, like the Benchmade Access locks. Since I have one sitting here in front of me, there we go. That has a bar that goes all the way across the blade, so it brings all of the lock bar as well as the liners into the mix, rather than just the little plunger cup holding onto a little thing in there. So there we go. The ergonomics on it, pretty darn good. The blade treatment on it's decent. I don't really have any issues with the S35VN. We should say it that way. I think others besides this green and black version here don't have a black coating on the blade. That doesn't particularly bother me one way or the other, but it is fairly narrow saber grind there. So this isn't anywhere near as slicey as a lot of their other models. But yeah, there we go. Let's talk about some specs here, and I can move on. It does have a 3mm blade stock thickness, so decently thin, so that's good. It is 3.46 ounces, or 98 grams, and that is for a 3.44-inch blade that I have measured here. So as near as makes no difference. It's an ounce an inch, but it is just barely missing that. As far as the blade length, 3.44 inches or 87.3 millimeters. And it is a little thin, 0.47 of an inch, so a little less than half an inch there, 11.9 millimeters for it. And yeah, for me, I ended up sharpening it 17 degrees behind here and 19 degrees over here. Usually for powder metallurgy, I will do 15 for a standard thing there. It would look absolutely ridiculous because this has a thicker grind. It would, yeah, I just decided to go thicker with it. Still cuts all right, but this is probably not as slicey as a knife as a lot of people really want. But still, there you go. Next up, kind of a really sad one. I think I've actually already done a Sleepy J Sunday on this guy here. It's a Rough Ryder. Yep, there we go. It's the 2103, even though you can probably, yeah, you actually have that on there. And about the only thing good going for this thing is it's a VG10 blade. And believe it or not, Rough Ryder actually does a decent job at their VG10. And it's really affordable. I spent $16 on this knife. I think I got it from Blade HQ, so I didn't even really get a discount code on it. But yeah, there you go. Let's talk about some negatives on it. For one, the back spring is very, very sad and weak. It's just not very satisfying as far as I'm concerned. It could maybe have some safety implications over something with a stronger back spring, but still, yeah, it just doesn't feel all that great. The fit and finish on the handles are not great. They are aluminum, so it keeps it nice and light. We have kind of a hammered pattern going on the fronts, and then just little bit of black paint of some sort on the top for that kind of a simulated bolster sort of thing. We have a brass tube that was shoved down in there, and it is proud and gnarly on both sides. So if you did employ a lanyard to it, it would probably chew up the material. Leather probably more than something like paracord, but still not really super great going on there. And I mean, the action for it after I've got it to break in and got some decent lubrication going on is pretty good, but it doesn't have a internal stop pin. It's not too bad if you're just closing it like that, but if you tend to fidget with something in your pocket, you're going to get some blade wrap on the blade on it. So there we go. Not a whole lot really to say about it. It's probably a little bit larger than it needs to be, but yeah, overall, let's go ahead and get through some specs on it. We got a 2.3 millimeter blade stock thickness on it, so that's good. 2.42 ounces or 68.5 grams, and that is for a 3.23 inch blade, so it does hit that ounce and inch mark. That's 81.9 millimeters. And then 0.46, so just basically about as thick as that Thunderbird that I had just taken a look at. 11.6 millimeters there. But yeah, like I said, the heat treat on the VG10 isn't bad on this guy. This does have a straight clip to it, which I don't know. As far as with having the really light back spring pressure on it, having that tip kind of faced more forward, it's useful to get to the tip, but I would be worried about piercing things in there, as if your hands are moving on you, it can slowly kind of dislodge on you. So it's definitely not my favorite slip joint, but hey, I was kind of interested, and at less than $20, it was a pretty good impulse buy. All right, next up, TwoSun TS503-G, because we got green here. They also did it in blue. That's kind of that grayish blue. This is another David Chen budget model from TwoSun, and just like the one that I talked about earlier, the TS502, this one feels like basically any kind of budget manufacturer under the sun could have made it. This does have a really thick blade stock thickness. It's 3.8, so TwoSun's normal. But that's about the only thing that, well, besides the action, that I can say kind of remind me of TwoSun. The rest of it remind me of, any of the other really budget makers out there. Stuff like Petrified Fish or possibly Gonzo or something like that. So for the most part, I would say probably don't bother with this one. It's really heavy. It's really bulky. And because of that, the blade geometry isn't fantastic. It is a little bit thicker towards the back than it is out to the tip there, just as far as behind the edge thickness goes. It doesn't really have a distal taper going on at the top or anything like that. We do have some lock bar access, so that's good. It's not a whole lot, but it is definitely there, as we can see. The action's okay, but a lot of that is helped by the fact that this blade is so thick. We are nice and safe from the blade coming up to the spine of the handle there. No snaggletooth going on. We got their standard folded over pocket clip with, it does have his kind of name. There we go. Kind of laser engraved onto there. And this is, I think still, I'd definitely call that more of a clip point there, but it's got a decent amount of belly. The tip is still above that pivot point, but not by much. So you still have decent tip access to it. And it just doesn't really feel like it was very inspired, I think, maybe in the design process, which is unfortunate because David Chen has made some fantastic designs. The 501 from TwoSun, and then, of course, the collaborations he's certainly done with Petrified Fish and others. Overall, this one isn't super expensive. I got it for about $50, which, that's still in that budget kind of range, but it just doesn't really feel like anything super special. Like, I got this basically because it was a new TwoSun, not because, oh, I was interested in this particular design, like I am with a lot of TwoSun designs. So, yeah, it's not one that I would absolutely recommend. There's nothing necessarily wrong if you have it and or if you like it. That's fantastic. But yeah, it just doesn't really have any of that. In the words of Metalocalypse, it just doesn't have that zazz, and I kind of want that zazz. So yeah, it's a little unfortunate, but still not a bad knife. Just not a great one either. All right, next up was this guy. This is a Kizer. It's full titanium frame lock with S35VN blade steel, if I remember right. Yes, S35VN. This is the Splinter. This is done by Tomcat Knives. And I got this thing really, really cheap. $81 for it. And this is, like I said, it's a titanium frame lock. S35VN blade steel. And if we look super close, we can see a little bit of a variance in the anodization. This is supposed to kind of look like a lightning strike, but they've already done in an Easter blue kind of color on there, so it's very, very subdued. Kind of reminds me of those candies, those robin eggs that you get around Easter. I think they're basically Whoppers with a different candy shell coloring over the top of it, but that's what it kind of reminds me of there. And there's some good things and some bad things about this guy. I do like that you can swap that titanium milled pocket clip over. That's fantastic. This thing came kind of messed up. I did record a video of me kind of doing some fixes and stuff like that during the unboxing for it. This was one of the reasons why it was as affordable as it was, but I basically ended up being able to fix it, so that's all sorts of great. I do like the Warncliffe design to it. That's pretty good. It is not the thinnest grind. It is basically a full flat grind, and then we have just a little tiny bit of a swedge up top here, but still very, very thick, especially for how small this knife is. I have it reprofiled to 15 degrees behind the edge. We can see the plunge grind is absolutely egregious. I am not okay with that at all, but hey, that was one of the concessions for me picking this up because it was as affordable as it was. It is nice and comfortable in the hand, though. Even though it looks super, super small, it is still basically 3.5 to 3 3/4 fingers in the hand there. And of course, I suppose you can choke up past that flipper tab there. But yeah, this did take a little bit of playing around with to repair it back to what it should be. But it's there. And yeah, I'm glad to have it. It is definitely a little bit different. The action on it was also pretty terrible, but I've been able to get that nice and smooth as well. So yeah, it's an interesting knife. Definitely not my favorite Kizer, but happy to have it, especially for the price. So let's talk about the stats on this guy here. We got that pocket clip that I had mentioned earlier. It's really it does have a little bit of a bend to it, but you can see how thin it gets up towards the top. It is a little bit difficult to get that into some thicker pants material or something like that. All right, that was the last thing. So stats on it. We got a 3mm blade stock thickness. That's pretty good. 2.54 ounces or 72 grams, and that's for 3.38 inches. So definitely under that ounce and inch mark. Titanium can do that, especially if you're making something nice and slim like this. So that blade length in metric would be 85.8 millimeters. As far as the handle thickness, we got 0.43, so fairly thin, especially because this contours on both sides. So that's just at the thickest point there in the center. That'll be 11 millimeters straight up. And like I said, S35VN for the blade. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting little pickup there. All right, next up, we got another Vosteed. This is the Corgi, and it's interesting. So yeah, it's basically micarta, and then we have some brass going on here. Looks like I do have some patina starting to form on there, as brass does. So we can flick this guy out, and yeah, it's a very, very neutral kind of thing there. It does remind me of a whole bunch of Jan Xanadu's double detent designs that he did for TwoSun. Just as far as the shape and all that sort of stuff is concerned. This guy's using 14C28N instead of 154CM, which for me, I feel a little sad. I do kind of prefer 154CM when I can get it. This also has that Trek-Loc, like I was talking about with the Thunderbird. And yes, this one does let go if you do some spine whacking with it. I won't really demonstrate much of it there. But yeah, you saw, or I at least felt it let go and then fall back down into position. So this doesn't take much to end up disengaging that lock. Still, it's perfectly safe for using an EDC kind of things, but you know, I wouldn't do something like stab it in upside down, or yeah, stab it in straight up, and then try to do a pull up off of it or something like that. That is not the knife or the lock that would end up doing any of that. It's got a little front flipper, so there you go there. It's also got the back flipper, which works as long as you light switch it and get your finger out of the way. Otherwise, just like anything else with a front flipper and a back flipper, that front flipper is going to catch you. So there you go. It's not uncomfortable at all, but there you go. This also does have a bead blast finish on there, which I find does affect the action on this thing, which just doesn't feel smooth. Feels a little bit more gritty, and that's after I've, of course, taken it apart and played around with it and stuff like that. So it will break in, but it is literally that bead blast finish that's kind of hurting the overall action on these guys here. The micarta on it's really interesting, as we can see if I get super close up, and it's easier to see on the sides here. It is micro milled quite a bit. This micarta feels, it's canvas micarta, and it feels much more like an actual canvas fabric than any other micarta I've felt. Because of that, it's not going to have that super nice, smooth, luxurious kind of linen fabric feeling. It does feel a little bit more rough and tumble, but it's the most true to the material that it was made out of that I've ever felt. That's pretty interesting. These brass plates, they're kind of interesting. A little bit of an homage, as the prototype for this was solid brass. Wasn't just a little pocket sort of thing. Otherwise, I think they had just recently, not raffle, but did a giveaway to hand that out to the community, to someone there. And I wasn't all that interested in participating because, I mean, even if I actually did win it, which, let's face it, just like everyone else, I don't win a damn thing when it comes to contests. But I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as some other people would. The blade, nothing really super wrong about it. It is 14C, like I'd mentioned earlier, which I kind of wish it was 154 like a lot of their others, but it is what it is. The blade stock thickness on it is a little bit thicker at 3.15. Not by much compared to the 3 millimeters that most of theirs do, but it still is noticeable here. Does a decent job at being slicey there. The plunge grind on it's not fantastic. I haven't, well, maybe just a little touch of a smile is starting to form there after doing a reprofile. And the pocket clip on this particular guy, you can't reverse, which is just a little unfortunate because almost everything else about this can be used, ambidextrously. So that's a little bit of a detriment, I think. And also, we don't have nested liners on this guy here. And I guess the back spacer is G10. It's not matching micarta like they would. But that being said, they did build this down to a price. And we can definitely see that with the non-nested liners, with the G10 backspacer, and even maybe the blade finish, which is a little bit easier or less time-consuming to do. as this came in at $53, which is fairly cheap overall. I think maybe the raccoons might be the other one that was kind of built down just a little bit compared to some of the others, but still. It's a decent knife, nice and neutral and all that sort of stuff. Just definitely not my favorite Vosteed out there. So there we go with that. So I said we got a 3.15 millimeter blade stock thickness on there. We got 3.4 ounces on this, or 96.5 grams. And that is for 2.96 inches of blade, or 75.3 millimeters. So definitely doesn't hit that ounce and inch mark. But it would, for this particular design, it would be a little much to attempt to do that. As far as the handle thickness, 0.48 of an inch, or 12.2 millimeters. And yeah, there we go. That is the Corgi. I suppose these things are supposed to represent the little perky ears. I don't know. We have a Corgi actual dog living with us right now. It is a little bit older and moodier though, so it's still cute, but maybe not as perky as most people end up thinking Corgis are. And all right, the last one here, I had a pretty darn good one. This is the TwoSun TS193-C for color. This is a Mazwan Mokhtar design, as we can actually see on the blade there. Something that hasn't happened for a while, but it's pretty hard to effectively do a laser engraving on the inside of a handle scale, like Mazwan has done with a lot of his earlier TwoSun work. This is the Orca V2. If y'all are familiar with the original Orca, it is also a ridiculously large knife, but this one, button lock. And very, very strong, all sorts of stuff. It is using D2 steel, unfortunately, but hey, it is what it is. Also, it's got that call-out pivot collar. If that's not something that you're okay with, then of course, go ahead and skip this guy here. But yeah, we can swing that guy out very, very easy, especially because the blade is very heavy. But we also have this nice hole with a fuller. You can flick it out that way, or reverse flick it, whatever you feel like doing there. This thing is quite nice. Let's talk about the anodization first, and it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to do with my current lighting setup, but this does have kind of a gradient. It starts at the very, very light bronze up at the top, and then works its way down towards the dark purple, and that's just basically a gradation of voltage as they're pulling it out. They're kind of increasing the voltage, but that ends up giving you that kind of gradation, and at least that does, for the most part, carry on to the clip, even though they kind of did it in a reverse order so that it's bronze up top and goes down to the purple there. I don't know if that was an oversight or if that was just something that they wanted to do to kind of give a bit of contrast, but hey, it is what it is. So this is a stonewash blade. You can see this thing is ridiculously smooth. By how low we can see the pivot is on here, this one doesn't have multi-row bearings, even though it would have plenty of room if this was further up. Of course, then you don't really have room for the button lock there. But either way, it doesn't necessarily need multi-row bearings, but just kind of pointing that out in case someone was assuming so. The blade itself, really, really good. Kind of trash as far as the plunge grind goes. It does technically end up here past where the blade starts, but it does thin out quite a bit. So, I have scuffed it up a little bit, but I haven't started to create a smile there, but it will happen very, very soon on it. And these kind of I'm not even call it a rainbow, more or less like, those weird sun kind of things like Good Morning America. Is that ABC? CBS? I don't know, whatever. It just kind of reminds me of that, where it's got the different lines for them. Ends up working out pretty well for the traction on it, though. I really do enjoy that. You can be way far back here, as you can kind of anchor your pinky back there. Not necessarily my favorite grip. I do like to grip it much more up top. Kind of wish there was some jimping up here to kind of go along with that, but there's not. It does kind of swedge all the way along the top until it basically hits that reverse tanto, for lack of a better term. It's much more just basically a sheep's foot blade, but just kind of kicked down to it. But yeah, really do like it. Really appreciate the full back spacer there. Again, it was kind of done with a gradient with a lightning strike on this one, but the bronze starts here and moves up to the purple. I think between that and the pocket clip, they did that purposely due to having it be a lot more contrasty rather than all kind of looking uniform. And that's all right. No problems whatsoever with any spine whacking on this. And yeah, that does definitely have both sides of that titanium really kind of coming into its own. And their plunger cups are quite good on basically all of their button locks. They did kind of take their time moving into it, but yeah, fortunately they did it right. So they don't really have any of those disengagement problems. And the only one that I've had a problem with jamming was the one that had steel liners in micarta rather than being fully reinforced with titanium. There we go. The back spacer there does have a channel on the inside that does allow that blade to get very, very close up towards the spine, something that would be uncomfortable straight up, especially with the blade stock thickness on it, if that wasn't there. But it is, and it protects the blade and protects you, so I'm okay with that. If that back spacer wasn't there, or they tried to change that for a budget version of this, that's going to be a problem. So, something that would probably be nice to keep in mind if the company is going to make a budget version. But for the most part, they're not going to, because TwoSun doesn't do prototypes. They wouldn't really realize it. And that's kind of one of the problems, but also kind of one of the affordabilities that affords you there. No, I got a little bit of side to side, but that's me having a little bit of a loose pivot going on there. No blade stick or anything like that. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and go over some stats here. Full 4mm blade stock thickness on there. Looks a little bit less because it starts with that kind of chamfered edge a little bit. But it's a full 4mm. 5.41 ounces. Yeah, this guy is a little hefty. That's 153.5 grams. And that is for a 3.44-inch blade overall. Looks longer, but of course that is also measured from the tip over here out to the tip, so you still do have a bit more sharpened edge and stuff like that. But that's how I measure, so there we go. That's 87.3 millimeters. And then 0.59, so fairly thick here, well over half an inch. That ends up being 15 millimeters overall. And yeah, this one was pretty good. I don't quite have the price that I ended up paying for this. It says $44, but I know that I purchased this through an Amazon seller, and I used some credits that I had on my account. I want to say it was probably around 110 or 120 or something like that. Still, it's a fantastic knife, and I do think it does improve on the original Orca, even though it's not, the exact same handle and blade sort of thing. But still, it's an improvement. And, it's a really, really great knife if you're looking for something that's huge and chunky. So, alrighty, there we go. Darn it, this one's a little bit longer, 34 minutes. Alrighty. I'll try and work on cutting some of that down even more, just because I kind of want to have things nice and quick and relevant. But there we go. There's another set of 6 knives. So, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo. And subscribe.